This research is relevant to practitioners because there's a growing number of policy instruments and planning tools that are requiring enhancement as part of new developments. A good example of this is the Water Framework Directive, which requires people to consider maximising ecological potential, enhancements where possible, to minimise adverse impacts. Our research is designed to help facilitate implementing and meeting these requirements, because we're exploring ways of enhancing coastal structures. So we're looking at how you can manipulate the design of structures to improve the ecological outcomes.
We've been using field experiments to look at how intertidal biology responds to the sorts of materials that are commonly used in coastal engineering. And we've been doing that to help us better understand how we can potentially manipulate those materials to make them more ecologically valuable. What we're finding is that using barnacles, which are really good indicator species in the intertidal zone, is that they're responding significantly differently between the material types when they have textures that are very similar to those that are used in engineering. So on the concrete, for example, what we found is that because it's generally quite smooth when it's used in engineering, is that the number of barnacles settling on that material type is significantly lower compared to, say, the granite, which is much rougher. And we've also found that the survival of those barnacles is significantly different between the material types as well. We've also been interested in whether you could potentially manipulate these biological responses by changing the surface texture of the materials artificially. And so for the concrete, for example, which is actually quite easy to change the texture, what we found when we compared the numbers of barnacles settling over the course of the season was that again we had significantly fewer barnacles on the smooth concrete compared to the concrete that we'd applied in artificial texture. Another thing we were interested in was how the microbiology responds to these materials. And we did this by looking at these blocks under the microscope. And what we found was that the nature of those growths was very different, again, between the material types. So on the limestone, for example, the microorganisms are able to actually bore into the surface of the rock in a process that we call bioerosion. And that's potentially important because it changes the way that the material heats up and cools down and dries out in the sun. And that's potentially important for other organisms that might be living on the surface of that material type.
Our research project has been designed to help answer some of the questions that are needed in order to enhance coastal structures. So we're looking at how you can manipulate the design of structures to improve the ecological outcomes. So where do we need to go next with our research? Well, there's really two things we need to do. Scientifically, we need to look at different enhancement options. We need to look at different textures, different target species, different material types, and see if we can get the similar responses to what we've found and others have found around the globe on a wider scale. And to do this, it would be really helpful to set up operational trials with live coastal defence or harbour projects, because then we can make the studies at a scale relevant to managers and also relevant to the legislation that's requiring enhancements of coastal structures. And so we intend and would like to work with coastal engineers and managers in order to facilitate this research. And if you're really keen and excited about what we've had to say today, then take a look at our website.